Welcome to UberCube, the podcast we
Welcome, Black. Carry on, Anthony.
Welcome, Yak.
We're leaving this all in. All right, so let's just go.
Welcome.
Edit nothing. Keep this in.
Welcome to UberCube, the podcast where we discuss all things cube, but with refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams, aka UberBear, and I'm joined this evening by my other two hosts, starting with the best one,
May, the Gremlin Fae. Hello.
Hi, May. And then the other one we invite because we have to.
I'm the guy that has the microphones.
That's true. He does.
Hi. I have tech.
Yes,
That's why I'm here.
We need a tech engineer. So
You've been demoted from host to
That's
tech
right.
guy.
I'm tech guy.
Congratulations.
I'm tech guy that's allowed to speak. That's fine. And I'm fine with that. Keep me out the limelight.
So we have a continuation of our CubeCon series, getting ready our journey to CubeCon. At this point, we've already discussed the Fae Cube and the additions that May was adding in her preparations. And recently we discussed UberBear's Horror Cube and basically the winning lines and how we might go about doing that.
What are we doing today?
Now we're going to talk about the infamous UberBear's Artifact Cube.
Infamous is right as well. This was one that in CubeCon 2022, this was the cube that when I kind of did my rounds and talked to people about your cube specifically, right? Because this was a featured cube at CubeCon 2022. And this one tended to get a lot of, hey, what do you think about Anthony's Artifact Cube? Right. And it's like, no one could wait. Everyone who drafted it was like excited to give feedback about it. Some of it very positive. Most of it very positive. Some, I would definitely say constructive feedback, nothing negative. And there's been some changes, and we're excited to see where this is going to go in CubeCon 2023.
Yeah, but before we go any further down this rabbit hole, let's do the thing we always do here at UberCube, and we're going to enjoy our libations of the show. May, what are you having on this delightful evening?
I am having another Wilson's Orchard, but this time it is cherry hard cider.
Ooh.
Nice. I am having a Sierra Nevada Flipside Red IPA. How about yourself, Stu?
I got me a Hidden Pipe. It's a coffee porter, and it's out of the Raleigh Brewing Company here in Raleigh, North Carolina.
I love that brewery.
I love it
Let's
too.
go ahead and crack it open and get to the topic.
All right, so let's start as we generally tend to do here at UberCube. This is a cube discussion. Again, this is going to be a featured cube at CubeCon 2023. This is one of Anthony's cubes. Let's start with, for those who are unfamiliar with this cube, and hopefully you will be very familiar with it because, dear listener, we're going to see you at CubeCon 2023 in Madison, Wisconsin on October 19th through 22nd. Let's start with, give us the overview, give us the 40,000-foot view, tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's a 360 card mechanical design. When I say mechanical, it's literally mechanical, as in it's artifact robust, right?
Well, not to be confused with, I would say a thematic cube, right? It's not a thematic cube. I think the themes are there. They're not unimportant, but it's the mechanics that are really the focal point. Right, they're the primary. Right?
This cube is kind of like when you go to grandma's house and she has that giant bucket of Legos and you dump them on the floor and you build whatever you want. That's how I would describe it.
I like mechanics.
Are you sure? I thought this cube was like the scene from Pirates of the Caribbean where it's just like, you must be the worst pirate I've ever heard of. But you've heard of me.
So when I defined it as infamous, last year we had some cards that definitely were outliers, right? And they were almost degenerate to the themes of, and it was a very thin red line between artifact versus anti-artifact.
I would disagree.
Was how I had designed it. But
I will disagree.
Go ahead.
I will disagree. There's nothing almost about the degeneracy of the cards that needed to be removed from the 2022 iteration of this cube. They were total degeneracy, and well, let's see what's going on with the new iteration. There's been some cool changes.
Yeah, so what he's referring to is stuff like Collector Oath, Kataki's War Wage, and then we had
Do I even have to say
Yes.
the name? It's Kappa Cannoneer. R.I.P. Kappa Cannoneer. You will not be remembered fondly. But yeah, cards that either were just not good for the environment as a whole, or were just such a super, super high value chase card.
Like
that
Trigon Predator.
They
stuff.
just warped it. They warped games.
It was stuff that within our internal play group hadn't really signaled those flares. It hadn't shined how bad it was for the environment, because we play a lot of casual Magic, but when we put this on the focus of the competitive, the Sam Blacks and people like that,
Yep.
they played a much spikier, very direct game of Magic, and they really revealed how degenerate some of these cards were, specifically Collector Oath, which was shutting down signets, and Kentucky's War Wage was taxing and gaining more taxes. I tried to remove everything that stopped your opponent from playing the game, anything that represented oppression within the environment. And I was fortunate enough with the Brothers War, and then we went back to Phyrexia again, that I got a lot of really great, specifically in green and some in white, to really overhaul that Selesnya package, like stuff like Tough Cookie, things like that we'll talk about as we move through the episode.
Such a good addition.
So good.
But yeah, so I've got a lot more. Green is not, I hate artifacts. Green has a lot more, I guess, Earth-like synergy with
Fun.
Artifacts, while still having stuff like Rex Changes and
Fun.
whatnot.
It's
But
got
yeah.
more fun in it. And I will also say this, right? This was 2022 that this was at CubeCon.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there was a bunch of cards in there that, got a few raised eyebrows and probably shouldn't be in there. Let's make this a little bit more fun and cut out some of the, the degenerate stuff and the stuff that's really just making it more unfun. But now it's 2023. We've had a full year, not just for yourself to take a look and see kind of what happened at CubeCon and what cards that you kind of thought were maybe on the edge. You've also had a year's worth of reps, because we have drafted this cube a bunch of times since, as we have the other cubes. And I think that maybe it's a bit of a reflection on our group and maybe other guys out there, other people, other players, other cube curators, other drafters. I'd be interested to see how the last year, now that we've had CubeCon, and hopefully this has more brought cubes and, the format to the forefront. How has the last 12 months been for everybody, the curators out there, when it comes to changes that you've made and the feedback and the data?
Yeah, so this one's going to be, like I said, as far as the breakdown, it's going to be complex lines. You're looking for synergies. As the drafter at CubeCon, that's what you're chasing. Another important design aspect of this cube is there are no planeswalkers. I chose to do that because things like Teferi and Duretti and Karns, these would be giant bombs and would not work.
May, how do you feel about no planeswalkers in this cube?
Well, I mean,
Not to put you on the
you're
spot or
asking
anything.
the person
but,
who has no planeswalkers to any of her cubes for reasons. I'm not biased. Shut up. So I'm sitting here. The reason why Stu's calling me out is I'm just sitting here slowly scheming and rubbing my hands together, being like, ooh, no planeswalkers, you say.
No, it's just in particular the planeswalkers, it would be imbalanced. If I'm on theme, they would be imbalanced and they would be very particular to certain color subsets, and it wouldn't have any diversity to the cube. And they would be pack one, pick ones all the time. There's no reason why anybody would choose a Goblin Welder over a Duretti iteration. That's what it came down to.
I don't disagree
That's
with
an
that.
interesting take.
I don't necessarily disagree. I'm not always gonna. I don't know. Look, I like Goblin Welder. I think it's a cool card. Yes, I agree. I see a Planeswalker. My eyes are going to wander towards it pretty quickly. But I think, given that there are a lot of Planeswalkers that sort of fit the theme and fit the mechanics, again, being a very mechanically driven cube, it's not outside the realm of possibility that you could find, let's say, 10 or 12 Planeswalkers that could maybe fit the vibe mechanically and at a power level. But I do respect the decision not to add them. I think, like you said, they really do come with a huge beam of light put on them when you're sitting there at a draft. So I get trying to move away from them.
Also, the focus of the cube is the mechanical aspects of using the creatures and their abilities to stack them like the Legos I was referring to. And I don't want to add any kind of additive distraction or sub games with Planeswalkers. I want players to look at the synergies and try to do the builds. There's a lot of constructing already going on already without adding additional additive distraction. What you got a thought on that, May?
The thing that I'll add is that when it comes to adding planeswalkers to this type of environment is that, like your Lego analogy, is that you have the pile of Legos and you're trying to build it up, and then some kid comes over with the discount Legos that No, not even like
Tycho.
the discount Legos. I'm thinking Lincoln Logs, right? He just pours Lincoln Logs down, and then it just starts building up this cabin. You're like, what are you doing?
Yes. And
Point is that the pieces don't mesh until you make some adjustments to make them mesh, for lack of a better term.
They just didn't do anything to add to the environment. The technical aspect of the cube simply didn't require them. Players enjoy the build. The build is what makes this. This is the most difficult cube that I have.
It is.
It's very challenging. Yeah, this one's probably the hardest. The ones when we're enjoying our libations as we do. This is one where we make the most mistakes.
I'm always making mistakes because I'm terrible and I'm always, a couple of libations in. But I will agree, this is definitely the most complex as far as all of your cubes. I would argue that it's quite comfortably more complex than even the vintage cube, which is relatively straightforward for the most part.
Yeah.
Vintage cube is definitely about getting the pieces together, unless you're going for like a high value or a straightforward value kind of mid-range package. But this has got so much synergy and so many synergies that I'll draft this cube and I'll look and I'll think, man, those 2 or 3 or even 4 cards work great together. And I've never seen it before. And then the next time I could even draft a similar deck with similar cards, and I've done it again. So
yeah. Also, as far as the breakdown, it's approximately 55% artifacts out of the 360. So you're looking at about 200 artifacts. And that does have color diversity in there, but mostly colorless. And that's on purpose, which explains the next portion. 2 to 3 color decks do thrive in this environment as you're drafting, and you can do monocolored. And other people have expanded past that. They've done 5-color good stuff. But you're looking at about 12.7% of mana base. It seemed to kind of have this weird balancing point where the mana base didn't have to be so dense versus some of my other cubes, like we talked about in the horror cube. I think it was 14.2%. This one, because I have so many colorless spells in there, that it's never really hurt it to have anything less than that. The mana base, what you're looking at, this one's going to be different too versus the Uberbear's Horror Cube and my other cubes. This one doesn't have any shocks. This one doesn't have any fetches. This is using the artifact lands, the pain lands, the fast lands, the indestructible artifact duels, and then you got stuff like, and these are very high pick, premium, stuff like City of Brass and Mana Confluence. These are stuff that you don't want to pass as being the drafter.
Yeah.
As far as the breakdown of the cube, and I did put like the Cube Cobra table down here so we can get it, but there's 169 creatures, 24 instants, 25 sorceries, 200 artifacts as I have announced, 11 enchantments. So enchantment density is pretty low. You'll kind of notice that if they're in there, they matter they have to have some kind of entanglement with artifacts to even matter. And then we've got some other breakdowns, but that's the gist of the cube, looking at it from 40,000 feet. May, you have a thought?
It is an important note that a lot of the 1 and 2 drops in your cube aren't going to be really dense outside of white. And because of that, people don't really get punished for going into the 2 to 3 areas. So even though you don't have the fetches, you aren't punished for taking the slower artifact lands. And that is an important game decision that you had for this cube.
Yeah, thank you. Never really thought about it that way, not going to lie. But would you mind taking on, May, the overview of the archetypes and synergies, please?
First on the list, you have things like Equipment Matters, and this is where a lot of those white 2-drops come into hand. And Golems as just a subtype, Constructs, Artifact Sacrifice, which is a lot of enters the battlefield, leaves the battlefield effects, tempo, control type things, artifact aggro, which is kind of equipment, I guess. And Metalcraft, which is just, hey, I'm going to stockpile up at least 3 and get a bunch of benefits. Modular, which is just, I have a bunch of +1/+1 counters that move around, which is fun. Welder, which is just our fun little artifact cheaty stuff, and our Recursion, which is kind of Reanimator Welder stuff, but not really.
Yeah, kind of last year's iteration had stuff like Necromancy and stuff in the cube, and it just didn't make a great deal of sense. So I've kind of transitioned that out. But for today's episode, I kind of wanted to focus on a different typal group. Last time, Stu and I talked about, in one of our previous episodes, we talked about the constructs. Mm-hmm. Well, there's another subset of creatures in here that I think if you're the drafter at CubeCon and if you pay special attention, there's a lot of value in here because people get enamored and they want to draft the modular or the equipment, and that's what comes out, right? Like, people seem to do that, but they oftentimes overlook, like we talked about before, the construct synergies. Well, today we're going to talk about
Golems. So The reason why I'm excited with this one is because the last time we drafted this cube, which was not too long ago, a few weeks ago, this was the archetype that I thought it looked to be fun. I thought there's at least one or maybe two cards in my opening pack. I'm going to take the highest value one and just kind of see where the draft takes me. I will say this. This was definitely part of my part A, part B kind of plan, but it's definitely a supplemental strategy, and that's what I loved so much about it. So you've got all the sort of typical golem creatures and enablers, right? So you've got your blade splicer, which allows you to give your golems first strike. You've got wing splicer, which allows you to give your golems flying. You've got vital splicer, which allows you to regenerate your golems, right? And then you've got maul splicer, which gives your golems trample. All super fun enablers, make your golems super powerful. One card that, and I will admit, I'd never seen this card before, and I was in love with it immediately. Huge impact on the deck that I built was Precursor Golem. This is a 5 colorless artifact creature golem. It is a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, you put 2 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature tokens onto the battlefield. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single golem, that player copies that spell. For each other golem that spell could target, each copy targets a different one of those golems. This was both...
What a fun card.
It was both a wonderful blessing and a terrible curse.
You want to sacrifice that the minute you cast it. Like, you want that to come in.
No.
Someone tries to contact that. You need
Oh,
to
no, I
sacrifice
wanted
it.
the fun out of this. Because trust me, I get it. It's 5 mana. Essentially, ideally, that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
You're putting 5 mana into 2 golems.
Yeah.
But that, to me, was just so much fun. I don't recall right now if I had effects that I would have been able to use on my golems. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But I thought, this is just cool. It's another 3/3. And I think by the time I'm putting this out, because Blade Splice is a 3-drop, Wing Splice is a 4-drop, Vital Splice is a 4-drop as well. So by the time I'm getting this out, I've got a bunch of golems out there. I'm getting super aggro with them. I'm trying to just finish the game off. If my golems got took out, by the time that this was like entering the battlefield, I'm not as worried about it. I'm just trying to squeeze through the last few pieces of damage. And I'm almost thinking, you know what? If you want to use your turn to just try and get rid of a couple of my 3/3s, it's fine. I'll deal with it. But as far as like flavor and fun and just, I love this card. Love it.
One thing that's really cool about that card is that it feels like Zada with 2 bodies that just come in for free. Hey, you ever wanted to play Zada in Cube? Well, here's one that gives 2 additional golems. Have fun. The other thing is that's really notable is that all of these cards create the thing that they support, and that is huge, where you don't feel bad drafting any of these cards individually, but once they all come together, it feels like a cohesive deck, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're standalone, and they also make this back to that synergy build. So if you're looking for something neat to draft at CubeCon that may be getting passed around the table and underappreciated, this is a really cool typal aspect you can build. I want to talk about this Techic Salvage Splicer. For 4 colorless and 1 green, you get a legendary creature human artificer, because each one of those he talked about before, the splicers, are all artificers. Yes. It is a 1/1. When we're going to call it IT. When IT Splicer enters the battlefield, create a 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature token, same as the others did before. Whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on IT, and put a 1/1 counter on each golem you control. This is the Golem Lord right here.
I don't build commander decks anymore, but if I did, I would seriously think about building.
Yeah, this thing's pretty nutty. So
really
you can make this huge army, and this plays kind of in the Bant color spectrum. So they all play well together. So it's good stuff. I enjoy this deck. I think it's underappreciated, and if you're looking for something to do fancy at CubeCon, I do recommend this. May, do you have a thought?
So what's funny about Iktiki is that he also punishes your opponent for sacrificing artifacts. So if it ends up coming up, he can actually punish a lot of those like token, sacrifice, whatever decks by just existing, and I think that that's hilarious.
Yeah, one thing I will say about this as well, Blade Splicer is such a known entity from Vintage Cube.
Yep.
Wing Splicer, maybe not quite as much, but definitely like, okay, it gives you golems flying, and it's only a 1/1, but you know, getting a 3/3 flyer is no small thing, right? Even only for 4 mana. But Vital Splicer and Maul Splicer are kind of unknowns. Techic is a 5 mana 1/1. kind of might fly under the radar a little bit. And the precursor golem, while I think doesn't necessarily, because it's an artifact and the cube is obviously very artifact centric, I think the fact that might scare people a little bit, that everything gets targeted. All your golems get targeted if a player was
If you were drafting this deck, I would take the Quark Clan Ironworks in a heartbeat and use it just to get rid of this precursor in the event that someone's targeting something negative.
I didn't have that in the deck,
right,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But if I did, yes.
There's other forms of that in here too, but you want to look out for it. Moving on to some of the other, now these are not splicers any longer. These are going to be some golems. We're going deep into that now. They're underappreciated, I think. And the first one I'm talking about is Bronze Guardian. For 5 colorless and 1 plains, you get an artifact creature golem, and it's a star 5, so whatever 5. Double strike, ward 2. Other artifacts you control have ward 2. Bronze Guardian's power is equal to the number of artifacts you control.
Pretty strong.
Yeah, it's pretty neat, right?
Very good in a golem deck.
Yeah, I would agree. So yeah, even if you're looking for a top end, May, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I think that just having something that scales with double strike is pretty neat. If you could just give him trample and then you have a win con.
Absolutely.
That's what Vital Splice is for. No, it's not Vital Splice.
Now we're thinking with Lego pieces.
It's Mole
Put the
Splicer.
Lincoln Logs away.
Yeah, it's Mole Splicer. That's the one.
Stu, would you mind taking away this next one? This one's going to be in the bombs list. I'm going to add it there later. But this card, if you're at CubeCon and you're drafting and this comes around and you're in these colors, do not pass this card.
I love this one. So this is Armix Filigree Thrasher. This is a 2 colorless, 1 black for a legendary artifact creature, Golem. It's a 3/2. Whenever Armix attacks, you may discard a card. When you do, target creature defending player controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control plus the number of artifact cards in your graveyard. And it's another partner. Not that that's relevant for the cube,
Nah.
but this is awesome. Like, it's removal on a stick that fits in with a wonderfully attractive creature type, in my opinion. And it's only a 3 mana for a 3/2. Like, to have I don't want to call it word soupy, because I really don't think it is. I think the ability is very, very straightforward, right? Discard a card, get rid of one of your creatures. But a repetitive value that you can get for the plain old value of just discarding a card. Obviously, for a golem deck, all right, fine. Maybe I'm not looking to discard too many cards, but I love this card as I can draft golems, and now I've got this card that can act as an enabler if I'm drafting a sub strategy where I want cards in the graveyard. Very elegant. Love it.
Oh yeah, I love this card. May, the next one I can't steal from you. Sorry.
No, I'd be insulted if you did. Tough Cookie. You heard me raving about it earlier, and I'm going to rave about it again. What a good designed card. I'm so glad that they finally created something like this. It is 1 and a green food golem, 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, create a food token, which is already pretty good value. Get a 2/2 with another artifact, but it does more. Pay 2 and a green. Non-creature artifact you control becomes a 4/4 artifact creature until end of turn. You can also pay 2, sacrifice a typical food thing. But what's cool about this card that makes it really unassuming is the fact that you can play this on turn 2, immediately turn that food into a 4/4 on turn 3, and put out up to 6 damage on turn 4 just off of 1 card is insane value.
Yeah, and
obviously,
this is how I redefine green from 2022 to 2023. I went with more of green has animate effects. Things like that, right? There's other cards that are in the list now that will wake up your
Oko?
artifacts. No, Oko never made it. But Oko, if there was a list for Oko, but he's too busy chasing this next card, which is gorgeous. Would you mind taking this one on, Stu?
Yeah, this is Ginger Brute, 1 colorless, artifact creature, food golem. Another one of these food golems, and they're all wonderfully designed, these food golem cards. This is a 1/1 with haste. You can pay 1, Ginger Brute can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with haste, or you can pay 2, tap, and sacrifice Ginger Brute to gain 3 life. It's got that wonderful food ability. It's got that wonderful hasty ability with the haste. And it's a gingerbread man on a magic card.
This one normally ends up in
love?
this one normally ends up in people who are drafting the Boros equipment deck. This is what they're chasing. Whereas Armix, breaking that one down, normally ends up in that sacrifice deck is where people typically are chasing that. And then Tough Cookie kind of goes in that Simic animate deck.
Can't be blocked except by creatures with haste.
It really plays well with stuff like Nettle Cyst and whatnot.
What's really cool about the last 3 cards that we just mentioned is that they're all just really good glue pieces. The fact that Armix can get rid of cards out of your hand for just miscellaneous reanimate strategies, or it's just a value piece for whatever black deck that you're building. The cookies come in and just either make a cookie or is unblockable, just glues with a lot of things. They are very, very safe picks, and if you do end up in the Golem deck, you're going to feel pretty happy with those.
I actually think that I watch a lot of Magic content. Not a cube content creator specifically, but I watch a lot of Aspiring Spike. I think anyone who's, does a lot of Magic content watching will know who Aspiring Spike is. Wonderful, wonderful modern brewer, deck builder, streamer. Love Aspiring Spike. And the decks with the food tokens recently and how artifacts and specifically foods with some of the synergies that have just come out of, I don't want to say nowhere. They've obviously been very deliberate by Wizards of the Coast. It's been a huge design space, just expansion over the last few sets. And foods, I love the design of them. I think they are a way to get a ton of value from, I just want a bunch of artifacts, or I want to sack some artifacts, or I want to gain some life even, just at their base level. So I think this is a wonderful design space for Wizards of the Coast, and I love that they exist in this cube because I think it's just captures so much of the essence of artifacts, especially in the recent design space.
This next one's a oldie but a goodie, kind of just a beater in the vintage cube environment at one point. It's Lodestone Golem. For 4 colorless, you get a 5/3 artifact creature golem. Non-artifact spells cost 1 more to cast. So
kind of seen its day.
It's symmetrical. It's seen its day,
vintage,
but
unfortunately.
I still run it. I like it in this cube because it's taxing, but it's not hating. So it kind of slows down that removal on both sides. It is symmetrical, but it's a neat card. It's on rate, great beater. Nobody wants to see this come down early. It's probably even a little outclassed in this environment for where it's at, but because I'm really looking to add more Golem synergies over time, as I am with constructs as well, so that people can see those lines, it's just a nice linchpin holdout. It's just sat there forever.
Yeah, and I think anytime if you're heading in that direction where anytime you're drafting, a golem-centric deck, and especially if you're drafting a very aggro-centric deck,
yeah,
and you're just trying to slow your opponents down a little bit, that one tax can be devastating for any deck that's maybe trying to chain a few spells together or is maybe trying to hold up a counter spell, something like that. That can be a very, very impactful card in an environment like this. Yes, I think it's seen its day a little bit in the vintage environment, but I think flavorfully and as just a great card in this cube, I think it fits beautifully.
May, would you mind taking on this next one, please?
The next one is Meteor Golem. Meteor Golem is a 7-cost artifact creature golem. Very expensive, but it's also just an artifact creature, so it's cheatable. Enters the battlefield, destroy target non-land permanent and opponent controls. Straightforward, it's a 3/3. It is a classic, I need a colorless removal piece, and it's a good cheap target.
It's something I'll do a welder loop with and won't feel ashamed about it.
I would feel great about it. Don't feel bad at all.
These next two actually do play into that welder joke I made. It's going to be Ancient Stone Idol, which is a 10 colorless. You get a 12/12. You get an artifact golem flash. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature. So it's kind of the ultimate gotcha combat defensive trick. And then it's a trample. And whenever Ancient Stone Idol dies, create a 6/12 colorless construct artifact creature token with trample. So it just breaks itself in half, essentially. So
pretty good
pseudo
value.
in half.
Pretty good value.
But it's also neat for a welder target and to do stuff with later, and you can do some recursion with it and break it. But here's the next one. This one's the big daddy for Stu. Would you like to talk about this card and how you would love to break this card?
I would love to, because this is filth, in my opinion. I love this card. This is Triplicate Titan. This is a 9-mana, 9/9 artifact creature golem with flying, vigilance, and trample. And when it dies, you get a 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature token with flying, 1 with vigilance, and 1 with trample. Pretty outrageous if you've got any way to be able to, again, like you said, welder this one out.
Trash for treasure.
Get some loops going with this.
Nutty stuff.
Yeah, it's...
Fair Wormcoil Engine, question mark?
There is.
Fair?
Yeah, it's fair. This is not fair. This is way better than Wormcoil.
I don't know if I would necessarily call Triplicate Titan fair. But
Agree to disagree.
But I love it. It's a very, very expensive card at 9 mana that's very, very impactful. That's a nightmare, even if you do get a chance to remove it without an exile effect or a bounce effect. So, I love this card. Again,
Great
just
card.
a really, really wonderful, highly flavorful flavorful, fits the design of this cube, and just I love this card. I think it's a great card.
And so I don't run any like sneak attacks or flash is not in this cube, which will be disgusting with this card.
I actually think Flash would be interested in this.
It is in the powered. No, I'm not going to do that ever. But it's in my powered.
I think you should. Just let me try it.
Just one time. Just let you proxy in Flash. Yeah, but stuff like that does play really well with, like I said, the trash for treasures, the welder effects. That's what you're looking for as a drafter. And all I wanted to do during this conversation on the golems is to unlock that idea so when you're passing these around at CubeCon, yes, these cards are standalone. Yes, you could run Maul Splicer by itself. But if you are fortunate enough to keep getting these passed to you and you get sufficient mana, I've seen this army unlocked on multiple occasions. Our good friend Greg, Stu's taken a swing at it. I've never done it, but I've seen whenever it comes together and they've got those 3/3s down, even with the Precursor Golem, which does put them at risk. Man, that's GG's if those stick. I mean, they get out of control.
Let's face it. I had a 40-card deck. I'm pretty sure I played 17 lands. 23-card deck. I will say fairly confidently that only 5, maybe 6 cards, maybe 7 cards that I drafted were very, very focused on that golem type. That was it.
Yeah.
But they still managed to be hugely impactful. It was, I drafted a decent deck, right? I'm not much one to toot my own horn, but I'm glad of this deck that I drafted because it was a fun deck and it was powerful. But it's incredible how with a 40-card deck, without that, 60-card or 100-card variation that you're going to get, you just do seem to see those picks a little bit more often, right? So in a deck like that, where you've got even 5 or 6 or 7 cards that have an impact and have that kind of synergy, you're going to get them. And I was fortunate enough to get 3 or even 4 of them, I think 4 of them in one game, at least 2 or 3 of them in every game. And they did a heck of a job.
Yep. So that wraps up the golems. They're cute, they're awesome, and they're synergy piece. And if you collect them all like Pokemon, you might have a good time at CubeCon.
You gotta catch them all.
Gotta catch them all, though. They're getting passed around the table. But I want to move over to the bombs. We're going to kind of go into what I have observed with my time with this cube as the cards that seem to have that leading edge for players. The ones that get this seem to come out with a little bit more win rate. May, would you mind taking on this first beautiful elephant?
And tell us why you love it so much.
I beg you let me have Steel Serum.
Oh, you can have that too.
You can have both.
Oh, we're not going to take any.
Okay,
Matter of fact, you can have all these. They have so many words.
Take them away.
Lasheel, a Clockwork Scholar, is a 2 and a white legendary elephant artificer creature that has 2 power, 4 toughness. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking artifact creatures you control. Whenever one or more artifact creatures enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability only triggers once per turn. Hey, it's value. And it protects my thing, all for 3 mana. Did I mention it has a thick butt?
It does. It's like ShamWow.
Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a big fan of the big, defensive creatures. Aggro cards, for a start off, or aggro decks are already going to be shaking their head a little bit if they see this come down.
It's 2/4, man.
It's a 2/4. It's not easy. Like now you're like, oh, it sucks for my golem deck unless I've given them flying because they're only 3/3s. Doesn't matter if they've got first strike or trample. They're getting blocked by this very beautiful elephant.
What's interesting too is this card does not have to go into combat to get that prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking artifact creatures you control. Mm-hmm. You can just send in your mirrors, just point, and the shield sits back and then ensures that they don't die, so they can you can try to trample over while keeping the 2/4 back to stop if there's a mirror match of aggro.
I need something that's going to prevent low power creatures getting blocked. Maybe we'll get to that.
Oh yeah, go underneath it. Yeah. This next one though, I'm going to take on. This one is one that I have observed. It came out in the Brothers War. And I would say that this is a very high pick if you see it come around the table, just because of what it's capable of doing. And that is Platoon Dispenser. For 5 colorless, you get a 4/6 artifact creature construct, which plays into that construct episode that Stu and I talked about, where you can fetch this out. At the beginning of your instep, if you control 2 or more other creatures, draw a card. Not very hard to do.
No,
not
pretty
much.
Easy to do.
It's not really asking much of you. No. It's just saying play magic. And then for 3 colorless and 1 plains, create a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token. And then, wait, there's more. If it dies, it has unearth. For 2 colorless and 2 plains, you can unearth it, which is essentially bring it back from your graveyard at sorcerer speed. It has haste, it attacks, and then I guess it exiles after the end turn. Did I get that right?
You did.
Okay, good.
So it's unearthed for 2 and white means that it comes back from the graveyard, but if it leaves, it has haste, comes back, but it gets exiled at the end of turn.
It's like flashback.
Or
Yeah.
It's essentially creature flashback.
Yeah.
Or if it leaves the battlefield, it's exiled.
Yeah.
Which
Okay.
is cool.
Beautiful name.
No reminder text on there for what on earth does, so we just have to assume. Would you
Reading the
mind?
card explains the card.
Well, yes, it's the whole zone thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Zones are important. It is.
Now, I was
Learn zones.
begging and pleading to cover this card.
What is this card
What
that
is
you
it?
are begging and pleading to cover? May, tell us.
Steel Seraph is a 6-cost, 5/4 flying artifact creature angel. With flying, at the beginning combat of your turn, target creature you control gains your choice of flying, vigilance, or lifelink until the end of turn. But wait, there's more! You can pay 1 white for its prototype cost to make it a 3/3 instead. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful card. When Brothers War came out, this was one of the cards that I pointed to and said, when I am drafting this set, that's what I want to draft. That looks fun. The fact that I can play this on turn 3 as a 3/3 and give something else flying, vigilant, or lifelink can just bury somebody. And then later in the game, if you end up drawing it, it's just a 5/4 flying that gives something else flying, vigilance, or lifelink. At worst, you choose itself to give lifelink or vigilance and just bury your opponent either in life or just defensively. I love it so much.
The fact that all these prototypes have that colorless as the initial cost is pretty spectacular. You can reduce it by investing in the color mana, but late game, you have access to casting this whenever you want for 6 mana. This card is fantastic. I love that design. I listened to your episode. It was Drive to Work. Highly recommend it. Tomorrow, when he was talking about how they were kind of designing these, and he was very much excited how they built these, and he said it was very intricate to figure out how to balance that power of the prototype versus the actual cost and make it work.
We've talked about scalability a lot in various discussions that we've had over many, many episodes. And these are, I love anything that gives you choices like this, right? This is great on turn 3. It's great on turn 6. It's great whenever you can cast it for 6 mana. It's definitely good if you can only cast it for 3, but there's never a time where you're not happy to see this card. It will stabilize you if you want to give it lifelink and you need it. Maybe you want to squeeze through some damage and you want to give it, some vigilance so you can attack with a flyer and vigilant and maybe defend yourself. I'm jealous I wanted this card, but I love you, so you can
I
have it.
love modal creature designs. It's why Adventure's my favorite mechanic, and it's not a big surprise that Prototype was my favorite mechanic from that set.
Yeah, absolutely.
So whenever it pops up anywhere, I'm excited.
When you're sitting at the CubeCon table and you happen to be in mono white, I would say that these 3 cards that we just talked about are a great pickup. That would be Lochiel, Platoon Dispenser, and Steel Seraph. If you see them coming around, these are high picks that I have observed in either Boros or some kind of Orzhov color mixture that when players do this, they come out on high win rates. So can't say that I'd pass it. This next one I want to talk about, we're still in white. And I'd have to say, as I was looking at my cube and I was observing like what I thought as the curator equaled a bomb in my environment, and that's kind of what we're focusing on, I noticed that white had a very high density of it. And this next one is Angel of Ruins. For 5 colorless and 2 planes, get an artifact creature angel. It is a 5/7 flyer. When Angel of the Ruins enters the battlefield, exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. And plane cycling too.
I love the plane cycling.
You can bin it.
Because I'm very happy oftentimes to have a card like that in my graveyard. A big creature. Maybe I've got some cheaty action going on. Or I'm just paying 2 mana and I'm getting that 3rd mana that I need because dun dun dun, I want to get my Steel Seraph prototype out on turn 3. So, another really, really scalable card, right? Great. Don't care if it's in my opener. I can ditch it for value. And if you draw it late game, it's a 7 mana house that's going to, I would say, ultimately in this cube, it's going to have a big impact on your opponent's side unless somehow they're not playing any artifacts. There's 200 in this cube. It's very unlikely. So just wonderful. Great card.
Yeah, I've seen it come down as a bomb. I would say recommend this. It looks like mono white's looking pretty spicy. This next one, Maul of the Skyclaves. Would you mind taking that one on, please, May?
Maul of the Skyclaves is 2 and a white for an artifact equipment. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. Love equipment that snaps on. And equipped creature gets +2/+2 flying and first strike. It also has the equip cost of 2 white.
Snap.
Anything that can give flying is going to be relevant, especially when you pay 3 mana to just snap it on.
Surge Engine, 2 colorless. We got a 3/2. This card is now moved into my blue subsection because all the things cost blue. But it is an artifact creature construct, and it has Defender. And for 1 blue, you get Surge Engine, loses Defender, and gains. This creature can't be blocked. But wait, there's more. For 2 colorless and 1 blue, Surge Engine becomes blue and has base power and toughness of 5/4. Activate only if Surge Engine doesn't have Defender, so you're staging these up. It's leveling, essentially. And then 4, but not leveling. It doesn't play to those rules, but I want to correct that before a judge gets me.
It's Figure of Destiny.
It's Figure of Destiny is a much better way of saying it, yes. And then for 4 colorless and 2 blue, draw 3 cards, activate only if Surge Engine is blue and only once. This card can actually become quite the beater. I mean, it's something that you just keep investing in. It's a good mana sink. Blue's a big fan of this, but when it has nothing to do, it does this. I've seen this card be very effective in multiple matches, and I do recommend snagging it up.
I like a card like this that in a control shell, if you're wanting to keep up mana for a counterspell and you get this out early on, then you have something to do with your mana. There's no, there's no requirements on this. It's not only at sorcery speed, as an example. So you do get the ability to be able to level this creature up. And, base power and toughness 5/4, that is a serious beater if you get this down and you've got any kind of ability to get this through the board. So again, a card that has all these different, like a good framework for something like a control shell. I think it's really, really solid.
Maybe it's a bit of a stretch to say, just a smidge, that I think that I could see a lot of parallels between this and like Hex Drinker in vintage environments,
Sure.
Yes.
where this is
Agreed.
pretty adjacent to it.
Yeah.
In terms of functionality here, is that it is something that you can mana dump into when you have nothing better to do, but you can do it at instant speed, so...
Yep, minus
cool?
the protection from a player. That's the best part about this, is you can just kind of keep moving through.
Yeah.
I love this card. The next one, though, I think Stu really likes, and I think he wants to talk about. This is a new edition, and I'm very proud to add this one, and might be the one that I think people might be losing their minds over.
I think that as much as I'm going to hate myself for saying this, I think of all the recently added cards, this one may be on the watch list. Right from the get-go.
Everything in my cube is on a watch list.
Well, we'll talk about other watch list cards, but I think this one definitely will be. So this is Chrome Host Seed Shark, 2 colorless and a blue for a creature Phyrexian Shark. Comes in as a 2/4 with flying, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value. So an incubator token is a token with X +1/+1 counters on it, and it has 2 colorless mana to transform this artifact. It transforms into a 0/0 Phyrexian artifact creature. This was the card that if I wasn't able to assemble my legion of golems to just end the game, this was the card that either I was able to use to end the game, or it was the card that I was getting such an absurd amount of repetitive value. Anytime you're casting, 3 and 4 non-creature spells, 3 and 4 CMC non-creature spells, not uncommon in a cube like this, I was pounding out these incubate tokens like nobody's business. And the ability to be able to sit back when I'm playing an aggro deck and I'm able to get a bit of an army out in the first 3 or 4 or even 5 turns, and then I've got this out, and I can just kind of sit back with my mana at that point. I'm happy to swing. I've got my golems, which are, capable attackers, more than capable of closing games out, and it just made it impossible in multiple matchups for my opponent to do anything. There's just no way they were going to be able to swing. Flyers, sure, but Chrome Host Seed Shark itself is a 2/4 flyer, so that is such a great wall against other flying creatures. And then there's always the fear that, if I just leave my board open and I attack with everything and I try and squeeze damage through, then I've just got all these incubate tokens and whatever else is on the battlefield left. So again, I think this is early watch list. It's bananas. It's in a vintage cube. It's a great, great, great card.
I'm in love with the incubate tokens. They're
so good.
They're multi-role. They're
good.
mana sinks. You can sacrifice them to different welder effects, KCI effects to get value engine off of that. You also can just flip them over for their raw value that you had on the mana value.
If you've got a 1 or 0 mana artifact that you've played, you can KCI out your 0 mana incubate token to animate your 6+1/+1 counter incubate token.
Which plays into this next card. So there's a lot of synergies. May, before I bounce here, would you like to tick over this next one? And reason why, when you're thinking about those incubate tokens and all these synergies within this environment as the drafter at CubeCon, you want to try to see all these kind of ties that bind. I did this intentionally. The cards give you diversity whenever you're choosing. May, would you mind taking this one
Hi,
away, please?
you like cards that win the game?
Yes.
You like big things.
Wait a
that
minute.
make
Wait a minute. How
dumb...
much it costs me, May?
What?
How much is this going to cost me to win the game? I think I can do 6. Yeah, I think I can do it.
6 mana to win the game. Hey, you like Hoof for 6 in blue?
I do.
I like Hoof for 6 in blue. You have Cyberdrive Awakener, 5 blue artifact creature construct, 4/4 flyer. Other artifact creatures you control have flying, but wait, there's more. When it enters the battlefield, until the end of turn, each non-creature artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 4/4. Oh my goodness! My whole board of non-creatures is now just a bunch of 4/4 flyers.
I love this card. Yeah. This is one of my favorite cards to finish with. Like any eggs deck, incubate tokens. It's just amazing. It's such a fun, rewarding
Pass me
way.
the hoof. I don't care.
This feels
Send
like
it
a
down
hoof.
the
Yeah,
line.
this is
Give me
bombastic.
Cyberdrive.
It's
I
a
want
big
that.
bombastic play. Players like it. It's easier than you think it would to be able to cast it for that 6 because it is splashable. And I'm a huge fan of this card. As it's coming on the table, don't pass this. I'm going to keep saying that you can never pass any of these cards we've named so far, but this one has a statistically high win rate.
Well, this is the bomb section.
It's the bomb section. So we're in the bombs. We're in the bombs.
There to be some bombs. And I will say, I agree. And I drafted that, funky Golem Chrome Host Seed Shard deck the last time.
Yep.
Obviously, Chrome Host Seed Shard was in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
It's blue. I had some other blue cards. One of those, in fact, multiple of those, was a counterspell. Let's just say that countering the Cyberdrive Awakener on at least 1, if not 2 occasions. Okay, yep, I'm done. Scoop cards. Let's go. Next game. This is a win condition. Absolutely abominable if you've got those other artifacts down that you can just turn into a legion, an army of flyers. 4/4 flyers, you don't need many of those to win a game. Maybe, 4 or maybe 5 of them at the most, unless your opponent's gained
You
some
don't
more.
even,
but it's so balmy.
and the fact that it
It's
gives your
incredible.
other artifact creatures flying, it doesn't even matter.
That's the point.
Besides the fact that you've awakened your non-artifacts, your other mirrors and stuff suddenly start levitating and they can now attack.
Take your signets.
You turn sideways. Yeah,
Yes.
signets, everything.
Pick
Let's go.
signets.
The whole army. Yes, it's fantastic. I'm a huge fan of this card. And if you're looking for a great finisher at CubeCon, I highly recommend this card too. But let's move over to we're kind of moving into the black section now. And we're going to talk about Ayara, Widow of the Realm. This is a new edition. I have not seen this card live played yet. I have seen it drafted, but I didn't see it stick. But for 1 colorless and 2 swamps, you get a 3/3 legendary creature, Elf Noble. Tap, sacrifice another creature or artifact. Ayara, Widow of the Realm, deals X damage to target opponent or battle, which isn't relevant, just flavor text. And you gain X life, where X is the sacrifice permanent's mana value. But wait, there's more. You can pay 5 and 1 red Phyrexian, transform Ayara, activate only as a sorcery. At the beginning of combat on your turn, it becomes Ayara the Furnace Queen, a 4/4 legendary creature, Phyrexian Elf Noble. At the beginning of combat on your turn, return up to 1 target artifact or creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Exile at the beginning of the next end step. This is where stuff like Armix that we talked about in the beginning, the Golem, where you're pitching it to the yard to kill their stuff. You're now using the Ara, the Furnace Queen, to keep getting these nasty little loops going. Can you see that, Stu? Can you imagine that?
Can I imagine
bang,
it? Yes.
Bang. I love you, Kitchen Armix.
But wait, there's more. If you buy that right now, you also get cranial plating. Would you mind telling me what that does, Stu?
Cranial
You
plating.
should never pass cranial plating, ever. All these others are jokes. Don't pass this card. If you don't, the person to the right of you is going to chuckle. Don't do this.
Let me just say, there has been at least 1, if not 9 or 10 occasions where this card has just completely just dosed me in this cube. Cranial plating, 2 colorless artifacts, equipment, equipped creature gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control, and it has 2 black, attach cranial plating to target creature you control, and it has equip 1 colorless.
You can do that at instant speed.
It just beats
It's
so
gross.
dang hard.
Yeah, that attach part.
It's absurd.
Yep,
It's very
pretty
strong.
nuts. Don't pass this card at CubeCon, guys. If you see it, don't pass it.
So obviously, like I said, this has domed me on more than one occasion. The fact that you can just move this at instant speed, +1/+0 for each artifact, is really very easy to make happen in this cube. You know, the no advantage to the toughness really doesn't matter when you're just assembling some kind of legion, especially if you've got a bunch of tokens. You can just swing whatever creature is on blocks. You just put cranial plating on that and you're swinging for 8, 9, 10 damage oftentimes. This is a finisher. It's super powerful, right? Even outside of this, outside of a very, very artifact-centric cube, I think it can be very powerful. But in this environment, it's just bonkers, and it ends games.
I agree. This is one of those cards that I simply would never pass. This is splashable.
So tell us about... So this is this next card has been a bit of a favorite of mine for a long time because to me, it's just a lovely, very flavorful, and just... To me, it's almost like an epitome of black kind of card. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Whip of Erebos for 2 colorless and 2 swamps. You get a legendary enchantment artifact. Creatures you control have lifelink, which has been kind of, I've watched games swing pretty heavily on the basis of this card, where people are down on the, they're down of their luck and then suddenly turn the game around, right? But then for 2 colorless and 2 swamps, you can tap it, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. If it would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. That's the one where you couldn't blink it out. That one specifically puts that clause on the creature.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't ephemerate that, even though it's not in the cube, to preserve it.
Yeah, you can't, but it's a great stabilizer.
It's a great way of, you pitch the
great way
creature
to
something
abuse
like...
the ETBs and the LTBs. Great way to be able to, I just want to gain a bunch of life. It doesn't matter what creature, I don't know if you're ever going to have like a triplicate Titan as an example that you can get out there, or, triplicate Titan's not a great example for the LTB, but, a big creature like that you can bring in because, well, not great for the LTB because it exiles, but a big creature like that you can bring in, it has lifelink, it gets you a ton of life, or maybe even squeezes through a ton of damage as well. But even just smaller creatures, or two or three power creature, it's a pretty decent little life swing on a repeatable effect. And I think it's really cool for a black artifact to have an effect like this. Again, repeatable effects, I just love them. And I think this is a cool card.
So I see something like this. May, tell me if you like this line, where you pitch Combustible Gearhulk to Armix, goes to your yard, and then use the Whip of Erebos to bring out Combustible Gearhulk decisions.
Ha! I'm pretty sure if somebody did that to me, it would take me a second to process what just happened.
I mean, I'm kind of hoping to bring in
the way that I look at it, though, is that if you're running a little behind, this thing comes down and it equalizes the game a little bit. It's your comeback card.
Yep, it's exactly what it is. It's not so much win more, so much as stabilization. Now we're going to transition into what Red has to offer, and these are 3 cards that Red have that I would say Anthony, aka Bear, has labeled probably should not pass them, just because I have observed in numerous games that these are game-changing, to say the least. Stu, would you mind taking on this first one, please?
Yeah, I will. But it's not the one that you think.
You cannot take Gut from May. She will not allow that.
All right.
I will find you. I will find where you sleep, and I will steal your
send
socks.
you my address.
I swear.
I will send you my address. So the first one we're going to talk about... I'm going to write it in the Discord and everything.
I'll teach you.
The first one we're going to talk about is Lizard Blades. This is 1 colorless and 1 red for an artifact creature, Equipment Lizard. Equipment Lizard. Mm-hmm. That's pretty sweet by itself. So it's a 1/1 with double strike. Equipped creature has double strike, and it has reconfigure 2. Anytime you can give double strike, I kind of feel that you're doing a good thing. That creature's going to appreciate you. Like, thank you. Like, I like being able to hit face. I like being able to attack. Yeah. But double strike is really cool.
Yeah. I love the reconfigure. I love that entire set, that mechanic. It's fantastic. Everything about it.
All right, fine.
But it's not as exciting as this middle one, though. That May wants to
tell us about.
May, tell us about the one that's not so great.
Oh, Gut, my beloved. The next one is Gut, the True Soul Zealot. 2 in a red, legendary creature Goblin Shaman, 2/2. Whenever you attack, you may sacrifice another creature or an artifact. If you do, create a 4/1 black skeleton creature token with menace, tapped and attacking. Choose background, not relevant. Gut, you're horrible. I love you.
Yeah, this card
She
is
is the rabble
amazing.
master that
Yup.
could.
Yeah,
this
that's
thing
true.
comes down, and if you have things to sacrifice, she will take over the game. She will win you the game, and if it's not answered, it will be a problem.
Yep.
I drafted this card.
I've drafted this card.
Do you know what it did? Nothing.
Oh no!
It did absolutely nothing. I drafted a deck and I didn't. I had ways to enable it. I had ways to get creatures out. I had I don't want to say overpowered token enablers, but I had ways to get tokens out. I had some artifacts. I will say that not once did I ever feel that I got this out and this card took over the game to the point that if you don't answer this, the game is over. Now, I feel like you do kind of need to build around this card.
Yes.
You do need to have a good density of either tokens or artifacts, and there's plenty of cards in this cube that give you the ability to be able to abuse that ability. I'm just saying that I'm yet to see it. I want to be proven wrong. I don't want to say proven wrong. I'm not downplaying this card.
You definitely will learn. This is like a server trade up is what you do. You take your servos, you sacrifice them, you upgrade them for 4/1s. It's a super aggro push. I've seen it done. It fits so well in the Rakdos sacrifice type of play style. With cards like Armix, when you're doing that style of play, those 4/1s, they'll just beat you to death.
That's what I'm saying. It's very build-aroundy, and I didn't get the chance to... I would say, categorically, I didn't get to build the deck that I wanted to abuse it, and I think it was maybe because Gut was on the secondary side of things, which I don't want to say you have to. It's decent value. It's a 3/2 for 3 with that ability to put a 4/1 in, but I just wasn't able to get enough repetitive value out of it.
All right, so the next one we have is Sardian Avenger. This is another one of Anthony's probably shouldn't pass this card. When it gets equipment on it, people are going to die. For 1 colorless and 1 red, you get a 1/1. Not so bad. Goblin Warrior, first strike, trample. Wait a minute. Yep. Put like a nettle cyst on this. You got some business. And whenever Sardian Avenger attacks, it gets +X, +0 until the end of the turn, where X is the number of artifacts your opponents control. So let's talk about that for a minute. I love cards that kind of are in juxtaposition, like traditionally red and green, and even white wants to be blowing up your opponent's artifacts. This one's got that weird trade-off where you're almost encouraged to get that extra damage by not blowing up that little, signet or whatever, right? Because you're going to get value off of allowing that to stay with Sardian Avenger. So it creates this weird game tension that I like about these type of designs. Whenever an artifact an opponent controls is put into a graveyard, however, from the battlefield, Sardian Avenger deals 1 damage to that player.
That's the cool part.
It's in a complete juxtaposition built in that card. One, if you want more first strike trample damage, you get that. But also if you blow their stuff up, you also get that. But
would have been interesting if it was
interesting.
Would have been interesting, I think, even more if it was getting the +X from artifacts that you're in your opponent's graveyard.
Oh, gross.
That would have been pretty
unfair. This card is fantastic. I think I've already played with this card. I got some groans with it because if you don't really, I joke about putting like a nettle cyst or reconfiguring lizard blades on this card. It's GG's at that point, right? This card can get nuts. So yeah, I highly recommend grabbing this, slap some lizard blades on it, and go to town. Yeah,
First strike and trample is not to be trifled with.
Yep. It's pretty crazy.
So, green.
Let's go green.
Mate, tell us about this first card. I don't know how I feel about this card. Is it good enough?
It's balmy.
Is it though?
Sarcasm?
I'm just kidding.
There are no fetches, so it is not as good as it would have been.
This is completely nuts.
That is an important disclaimer, though. He's referring to Tireless Tracker, which we're going to pass to May now.
Tireless Tracker is 2 and a green for a Human Scout 3/2. Whenever a land enters under your control, investigate. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a +1/+1 counter on Tireless Tracker. This is a card where, if this were Commander, this would be pretty fantastic. But this is not fantastic because it's not Commander. This is a case of you're getting a 3/2 for 3. And let's say, best case scenario, you play this on turn 4 so that you guarantee get that land drop, right? Great. You played this on turn 4, you got a clue. And 1 mana, you don't even get to correct the clue in the same turn. Don't get me wrong. If the game can go long enough, then it can take over. It can get you a lot of value. And I don't think that you're ever going to feel bad about this card, because over time it is going to just generate you value. But you also have to weigh in the fact that this is just a 3-2 that maybe sometimes puts in a clue, or sometimes just kind of sits there because you didn't get an extra land drop.
And the reason is, and we'll go all the way back to the start of the episode, there are no fetch lands.
Correct. That's why I chose it. The tireless provisioners in here too. I didn't want these to be, I'm going to say these are bombs, but they're different than what you're looking for in a powered vintage environment because of the lack of fetches. That makes a huge difference in the power level of this card. May, you have a thought?
Yes, Tireless Provisioner is better than this because it can make a treasure, which means that you can additionally play it on turn 4 and then play an additional 2-drop, or you can play it on turn 3 and play a 1-drop on the same turn.
I would agree with you. And I think the context truly matters, because if you took these cards outside of this shell, and I think I fell a little bit victim to this when I was building this list, now that we're saying it out loud, I labeled them as bombs because, I just got done playing my Powered Vintage Cube.
It's
a bomb.
Striker. It's an incredibly powerful card.
Fantastic, but not a bomb here.
I would
on
agree.
The cusp.
I would agree. Yeah, it's not bomby. Like, it's great if you can get it out very early and you've got fetch lands to be able to get multiple activations. Because let's face it, everybody is... Because obviously, anytime you get to sack clues and draw cards and make a creature bigger, right, that's my happy place right there. But I feel like it's not quite as balmy in an environment like this where you don't quite have the support for those sub-abilities. So it's cool. It's not a card I'm going to pass over.
It's not a bomb. It'll be utilitarian. Yeah. This next one, though, is a bomb. If you get this out. And it's going to cost you to do the thing, right? Titan of Industry for 4 colorless and 3 green, you get a 7/7 reach trample elemental. When Titan of Industry enters the battlefield, choose 2. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Target player gains 5 life. Or create a 4/4 green rhino warrior creature token. Or put a shield counter on a creature you control. Which means if it is dealt damage, it absorbs that damage for 1 turn. It gives it a temporary shield, and then it goes away. So you can just ping that off or just whatever, it goes away. But it's still neat. I love this mechanic, but this has cost you a lot of mana, but I wanted a good, nice juicy top in for the green section that gave value. A chase card, basically. Something that you'd want to curve up to. I just feel like this was a good finisher. May, do you have any thoughts on this?
It makes my inner Timmy very happy.
Yep.
two out of those, right? 2 out of those is not to be messed with, right? Even just if you're playing green, you're trying to be aggro-y, I would imagine, right? Green is a little more on the aggro side. Being able to put a 4/4 as well as a 7/7. 7 mana is obviously a big investment, but if you can get a 7/7 and a 4/4 and either gain 5 life or protect a creature or destroy something that's just making your life miserable, it's a great effect.
It's modal.
3
I love
effects
it.
for a 7 mana, which again is not cheap, but the additional ETB abilities, they're pretty strong. So definitely a finisher and very balmy.
Yep. This next one, this is a new addition, and I am predicting that this is a bomb. Stu, would you mind taking this one away, please?
So this is Glistening Dawn, and I love the fact that you chose me for this, because I'm about this, this kind of new thing that we've got going on. So this is a sorcery, 2 colorless, 2 green, incubate X twice, where X is the number of lands you control. You don't need any more than the 4 mana. Right. For this.
Right.
If you're getting this down on turn 4 just for the 4 mana, and you've got the potential for 4 4/4s to be coming out, even if you're just playing it on curve, right? Turn 5, you play a land, you activate 2 of them, now you've got 2 4/4s, and then on the next turn, you've got another 2 4/4s. That, even by itself, you don't need to cheat this out. It's not something that requires you to, do any kind of crazy setup. You're just getting rewarded for playing Magic, and I like cards like that are very, very simple. Again, very elegant, but very, very powerful.
Yeah, I think it rewards people for just playing Magic on curve. I think I enjoy it. May, what do you think about this card?
I'm kind of mixed on it.
Yeah.
Because, and this is going to be a far-fetched comparison, it gives me a sort of Foretell vibe.
I like that, actually. That's pretty good.
Just let me follow this through.
We're vibing with you, man.
That when you're paying the 4 up front, you're essentially foretelling for 4. And then later, you're paying that additional 4, so you're paying 8 mana in order to get 2 4/4s, which is kind of expensive, but it does scale with the game, so...
Yeah, but that's treating them as creatures exclusive, not treating them as paying
Permanents.
4 and permanents that you can awaken, Tough Cookie Alive, stuff like the Animist Alive.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, you can do all kinds
It
of
is a
nutty
great
stuff with this,
reanimate
yeah.
target.
4
Like, I would definitely
permanents.
feel good in a Simic package of playing this turn 4 and
Yeah,
then
just
getting
animate
to
stuff, yeah.
whatever it's called. The
Cyberdyne Awakener, just...
not Awakener. The Awakener's like turn 6 if you don't have ramp. But anyways, point is that if you get this, then do Cyberdrive Awakener later, then you can get a lot of value.
Right. So it's just a nice little kind of a utility piece. I put it in the bomb section because I'm curious. It was an unknown variable to me. Kind of like, I know this Heatchrome Shark is really good, and I've seen the repetitive value generation off of that and how it is played in its lines. I'm curious if Glistening Dawn sees some kind of similar, because late game, this is nuts, and then you do another one of those Awakener type effects.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it because the fact that I have the potential to get 4 4/4s out for the cost of, don't care about the mana, for the cost of 1 card is just, I love that. Absolutely love that.
Yep.
And it gives you the ability, even if you get this in the later game where those incubate tokens could be much larger, and maybe not only do you have the ability to play Glistening Dawn, but you even potentially have the ability to start getting those incubate tokens out and converting them, or what's the word? What do they do?
They basically
Into creatures?
transform. They're like,
Transform into creatures. It's a mana sink and a bunch of value for just 1 card.
Verdurous Gearhulk. That's what I was thinking.
Verdurous Gearhulk.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that makes sense.
Where you go, turn 4 this, turn 5 Verdurous Gearhulk, turn 6 Cyberdrive Awakener. That's just GG.
Yeah. This next one is interesting because it plays into what she just said. In addition to, it plays into the incubate tokens and modular, which this will all make sense in a second. But Kadama of the West Tree, for 2 colorless and 1 green, you get a 3/3 legendary creature spirit reach. Modified creatures you control have trample. Modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player. Search a library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So modified is anything that has
+1/+1
counters, enchantments, equipment. You can see where this card is a linchpin synergy card that'll bring to life your incubate. It'll bring to life your modular, etc. And any of your equipment stuff. It gets pretty nuts, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and what a beautiful curve if you can curve into, it doesn't even matter, from Kadama of the West Tree into Glistening Dawn, and then who cares what you're doing on turn 5 or turn 6, right? Even if it's just transforming your Glistening Dawn tokens, you've now got these 4/4 tramplers, right, with the +1/+1 counters on them, and they have, so they're 4/4s, they have trample, and they're drawing you card if they deal combat damage to a player. Like, you now have just those 2 effects by themselves are enough to take over a game.
Well, they get you a basic land. They don't draw you a card, but that's what's neat about it. And they put it on
yes.
Same difference, though.
It's drawing a card.
You're doing
still.
deck thinning, so
Absolutely,
it has a positive net on it. I love this card. If you can get that synergy at CubeCon, yo, hey, Uber Bear, I did the thing. That'd be awesome. But this next one is infamous. May, would you mind taking on this one, please? This is a real
Happily.
bomb. This is not an untested bomb. This is a known bomb.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this card is known in several formats. It is a several format all-star. It's Isaka's Chariot, which is 3 and a green legendary artifact of vehicle 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, create 2/2 green cat creature tokens. Whenever it attacks, create a token that's a copy of another target token you control, and it has crew 4. The fact that it makes the things that crews itself is huge. But on top of the things that it makes to crew itself, it makes more of those things. It is all a self-included package.
And it makes any token, by the way. So if you have another token out, a construct or something, it just gets that too. You don't have to pick cat. I saw that happen recently.
I'm not picking cat. I'm picking golems because I've got it in my golem
That's what
deck.
you did. You did that. Weren't you the one running this with golems?
I was.
Yeah.
That is exactly correct. I ran this in my golem deck and it was a house.
That's pretty nuts. But now we're going to kind of transition over to the colorless section. That's your green bombs. That's your Wooburg bombs that we just went through. And those are some high picks, high yield cards in my my opinion, from having both curated and played this cube for years. I would say everything we just named in the list, which will be included in the show notes, when you're at CubeCon cracking packs, I can't say you can take them all, but I wouldn't pass much of these.
Except Tyler's Tracker.
Yeah, Tyler's Tracker, I think I'm going to downgrade a little bit, yeah. But this next one is definitely a known quantity from CubeCon number 1, and that was Steel Overseer. For 2 colorless, you get a artifact creature construct, 1/1. You can tap it, put a 1/1 counter on each artifact creature you control. I mean, it's just simple, elegant, and does the thing and plays into all the modular and all those effects you want. It's amazing. There's no reason why anybody would just pass this card. It's a pack one, pick one, in my opinion.
It's very strong.
Yeah.
I agree. I think, again, because you have the modular support for the +1/+1, anything that cares about modified creatures, which obviously this is going to do to all of your artifact creatures, is very, very powerful. This is a card that can definitely get out of hand very, very quickly if your opponent doesn't have a way to get rid of this, and you have any way to be able to get tokens out very quickly or artifact creatures out very quickly. It can very, very, very much take over games.
I would agree with that totally.
Definitely the card that when we've done pick one, pack ones of your artifact cube, this is a card that a lot of people are like, give me some Steel Overseer. It's notorious for a reason. It goes just well with
Agatha's Soul Cauldron. It does.
Stop giving away my tech.
May, you have any thoughts on Steel Overseer before we move on?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that while 2-drops are already just really limited anyways, but being this into 2-drop into something into like that, I was trying to find the stupid splicer's name. I'm sorry.
Blade Splicer?
Blade Slicer. If you go into this on turn 2, turn 3 Blade Splicer, you already have a setup for a pretty nasty board state on turn 3. And being able to get a strong turn 2 is very, very relevant when the 2-drops just aren't very diverse. It's a great card. Takes over the game. If it sticks, then all of your artifacts just get bigger, like we've all said. Interesting
point that you made, because if you actually look at the list, right? So you've got 4 1-drops in white. Arcbound Javelineer is 1. That's an artifact creature.
Right.
Arcbound Mouser is also an artifact creature. Esper Sentinel is another 1-drop creature. So 3 of the 4 1-drops in white are artifacts, right? There's no 1-drop artifact. There's no 1-drop creature in blue. There's only 2 1-drops in black. None of them are artifacts. There's 4 1-drops in red. Reinforced Ronin is an artifact. Rabbit Battery is an artifact. Bowmat Courier is an artifact. And there's actually only Haywire Might, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so only Haywire Might. So you're not going to be able to get this out and then turn 2 after getting a 1-drop out and then be able to get activation. So I almost think that this is something that you're trying to get maybe some tokens out, maybe bait a bit of removal, hope that you've got a bit of a density of artifact creatures, and then get that value, for
it's cumulative. It's
later.
Cumulative value.
It's definitely cumulative value. So not something that I think you're going to get immediate value out of. But if you are able to stabilize with, and you don't need a lot of artifact creatures, 3, if you've got 4, you're getting insane value out of it. But I think if you've got that 3 or 4 artifact creature, board state when you've got Steel Overseer down and you're able to activate it, or it's got haste as an example, then you're getting some serious value.
Yep,
for sure. Turn 1 Zabaz into turn 2 Steel Overseer would feel pretty good though.
That's right. I didn't look at the colors, but
Hope
my love of
Gafir
Zabaz.
also. Yeah, you can do Hope
my love of Zabaz is well known.
Yeah, Scavenge Brawler is another one that I run in here that I consider a bomb, and there's a lot of reasons for it. 6 colorless for a 4/4 artifact creature construct. Flying Vigilance Trample Lifelink. Pay 5, exile Scavenge Brawler from your graveyard. Choose target creature. Put 4 1/1 counters, a flying counter, a vigilance counter, a trample counter, and a lifelink counter on that creature.
Let's
Activate
go through that
only
again.
as a sorcery. It's a laundry list.
Let's just go through this one simple, a thing of that ability.
Yep.
It's not or. There's no or on this.
There's no or.
It's an and.
It's
amazing how much or and really do have a big impact in Magic. So you're not just getting the +1/+1 counters, and one of those, you're getting a flying, vigilant, trample, lifelink, +4/+4 on any one of your creatures.
Yep. So it plays a lot like you would pitch this, if you weren't hard casting, you'd pitch this to Armix, kill the creature, And then later, you're going to pay the 5 to bring it back, and you've got the equivalent of a Verdus Gearhulk type effect that gives it like this super monster, right? So you can play into those type where you're wanting to put this in your graveyard, you're intentionally ditching it, so that you can pay the 5 to put it on another creature. It could even be a servo.
It doesn't
This thing
work.
gets out of control.
It doesn't work with Agatha's Soul Cauldron though, so it's unplayable. Sorry.
The way I look at this is that this is just an increasing savagery that's also just a 6-drop scary thing. So
Yes, it is.
This was another card that I had in that deck, in my Golem, Asika's Chariot, Chromho Seed Shark deck. And yeah, again, safe to say, absurd card.
It was. The next one, May, I think you like this card,
Hello.
don't you?
Hi, I will. Reckoner Bankbuster, which got banned in Standard of all things, is a 2-cost artifact of vehicle 4/4, and when it enters the battlefield with 3 charge counters on it. You may pay 2 colorless and tap it to remove a charge counter from it. Draw a card. Then, if there are no more charge counters, then you also get to create a treasure token and a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token with this creature cruise vehicles as though it had power 2 greater. So, this is alongside that Isika's Chariot type deal, where eventually you're going to be making the thing that you support, but you're also just paying 2 and then 2 later to draw cards. Or if you have ways to just enable it immediately, it's just a 4/4, which is all really nice things. The way that I look at it is that this is just modern era Smuggler's Copter, and that is pretty great.
I would agree with that, totally, yeah. I'm also testing it in my Powered Vintage Cube. I decided to experiment with it.
Don't test it.
It's in
Just
there.
put it in.
It's already in there.
It
We're using the
deserves
word
to be in
test.
there.
So test is a curator's way of saying that if it fails abysmally, I can just say that I was testing.
I would be surprised. I think this is 100% Vintage Cube level. Again, a 4/4 for only 2. Yes, it's a vehicle, but that ability to be able to draw a card and to be able to create something that can pilot it with a bit of aggro built in. It's just, again,
It's a fun
I
card.
love the design space on cards like this. This is another one that I think has just been knocked out of the park recently. Great card.
It's a mono dump.
It is.
It
And
is.
I
Like
love
mono
mono
dumps.
dumps.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Here's a card that's neither a mono dump or anything. You don't pass this card. I'm going to go with another one of my big red, do not pass this card if it gets passed to you, is Nettle Cyst. For 3 colorless, you get an artifact creature equipment living weapon, which means it gets a germ on it, right? For those that are familiar. And then equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control, equip 2. It just makes a beatdown monster.
I mean,
Do not pass this card.
I opened the promo of this, and I think it's the promo that I opened that is in this cube.
It is,
right?
yep.
And yeah, this is a great card. It's such a wonderful aggro card. It's only 3 mana. It gets, the +1/+1 for each artifact, again, just synergizes so beautifully with what's in this cube. It grows as you're just organically playing the card or playing Magic, playing the cube. It's a finisher. It really is. It can get out of control very quickly. It's a bit of a must deal with.
Yep. And this next one, May, you just talked about it. Would you mind taking it away? These are more of the...
Absolutely.
To keep squaring this
We're
off.
bringing
These
back
are the
my
bombs.
baby boy, the
Yep.
Smuggler's Copter. 2 cost vehicle for a 3/3 flyer artifact of vehicle. Whenever it attacks or blocks, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. And it has a crew 1 cost. So unlike Bankbuster, this thing has evasion. It helps you loot your cards, and it only crews for 1. However, unlike Bankbuster, it doesn't eventually create the thing that crews itself. It also doesn't have like the built-in mono dump that like refunds you with tokens. But despite that, Smuggler's Copter has just aged incredibly well. It's almost as if it warped the entire format it was a part of.
Almost, yeah, almost. Like exactly did. Yeah,
Almost.
agree with that. 2 mana, 1 crew, 3/3 flyer. Just leave it. Even if you just left it that's pretty strong in and of itself, right? But the fact that you do get that looting ability, hence the Looter Scooter nickname, this is nuts. This card. It's obviously vintage power level.
It is.
Very, very powerful card.
It is. I do. So with a lot of my curation designs, when we talked about Uber's Horror Cube, and we talked about in our Power Outliers, our Pinch of Power episode, I'm okay with having spiky cards in here, ones that actually elevate the power level a little bit. Some you must deal with them. That pretty much this list we've been going through, with the exception of Tyler's Tracker, which was misleading as all get out. But these cards, as we migrate through them, they're a big deal. And when you see them, they're high picks, they're high yield cards.
I think
and
if there's enough of them, at that,
if we've been going through, the density keeps going. I had to quit adding to this list eventually.
Yeah, I think if there's enough of them, even at this kind of CMC, right?
Yeah.
In the 2, 3, 4, whatever, I think you've got enough of a density where most drafters, if not all drafters, are going to be able to pick up at least one, if not a couple of these kind of power outliers. And I think it just makes the games more interesting, right?
Yeah.
I think this is not... Can it end games? Yeah, okay, sure, it's a 3/3 flyer. But I think it's interesting enough, it's fun enough as a card, and as powerful as it is, I think it's awesome. It's a cool inclusion in a cube like this.
Now, back to that Lego analogy I talked about. There's one card in this cube that truly epitomizes the Lego machine, right?
Truly epitomizes the watch list.
It's everything's a watch list for you. But
This is like the third card. Come on now.
Retrofitter Foundry. For 1 colorless, you get an artifact. Pay 3, untap Retrofitter Foundry. Pay 2, tap. Create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. Pay 1, tap, sacrifice a servo, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Or tap, sacrifice a Thopter, create a 4/4 colorless construct artifact creature token. Plays into those artifact Thopter synergies that I have in here. A lot of those. I have servo synergies in here and kind of pseudo servo lords, but I also have this huge construct secret. If you unlock it, that Stu and I will try to tell people at CubeCon, kind of like the Golem. So if you find the right key pieces, you can fall into this typal aspect.
Yeah,
you don't have to.
There's no Tellurian Academy or Gaia's Cradle that's really going to break this card. I don't think from just being able to dump a boatload of mana into it. So I'm just kidding. I don't.
It's a value engine. These are strong utility components.
Yes, it is.
May, what is your experience with this card?
My experience with this card is that it generates a lot of value. Like we've already mentioned, that it's a mana dump. And the way that I kind of look at it is that it is, well, I don't feel like it's a fair comparison for me to say, but it's that kind of trading post archetype where you're playing it with the intention of getting value throughout the game when you play it. But the fact that you can play this on turn 1 is such a huge swing for you. And you can just hold up so much removal, and hey, you didn't use your removal, mana dump.
Yep.
It's amazing how quickly you can start pumping those servos out.
Yeah, this card's
if you're not getting interrupted. And I don't have to do anything with the cards in my hand other than just play my lands and just, is your board empty? I'll just attack you with these servos. And maybe I feel like eventually I'll create one with flying because maybe you got a flyer that I care about, or maybe you don't. And I'll just start putting 4/4s out. Like, again, so much repetitive value from a 1 mana artifact. It's crazy value. Not abusable like it is in a vintage cube where you've got those, super fast mana accumulators, but definitely very strong in this cube.
So that kind of ties off the highlights of the bombs. We went through that section. Now I want to talk about we talked about Uberbear's Horror Cube, where I had the Phyrexian Altar combo, where you would do the Gravecrawler and loop it. And we kind of talked about that in that episode. Or in this particular one, I have the Croc Clan Ironworks combo. KCI combo as it's known. And what I've included in the show notes, and I've included a link to how it works, because there's a lot of complexity to how this is, and Stu and I have talked about this, and I believe May agrees with this. This one's more complex than, say, the Phyrexian Altar combo, where you had to have the zombie loop kind of going, right? Would you both agree? Gravecrawler Plus. This one requires a lot more pieces to it. And I wanted to run through one of those and kind of talk about the components. This one here, there's so many of them, by the way. I checked, if I'm not mistaken, hopefully there are 11 combos within this cube. And not all of them get you somewhere. Some of them are those infinite loops where you just drive somebody crazy. But this one here is a 4-part combo that I'm going to kind of break down for you for anybody that wants to try to do some contesting at CubeCon to draft these. So let's go over one of these components. So it requires Side the Master Thopterus, which I'll read that to you for those that aren't familiar. For 2 colorless and 1 blue, you get a 1/4 legendary creature human artificer. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, and you can pay 1 and a blue, sacrifice 2 artifacts, draw a card. Okay, that's neat. The next piece that you're going to require for this particular setup is Mirror Retriever. Artifact creature Mirror, 1/1. Whenever Mirror Retriever dies, return another target creature artifact from your graveyard to your hand. The third piece you require, and very critical, is Scrap Trawler. For 3 colorless, you get an artifact creature construct for a 3/2. Whenever Scrap Trawler or another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return to your hand target artifact in your graveyard with lesser mana value. And then your grand crescendo piece is Krark Clan Ironworks. For 4 colorless, you get an artifact, sacrifice an artifact, add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. So here are the prerequisites, and I'll have this in the show notes. Anybody wants to study this and really up their level of Magic. Mirror Retriever has to be in your graveyard. How might you do that? Well, you sack it to the Krark Clan Ironworks before you even begin doing the thing. And then all other permanents that I just listed, which are Psy, Mirror Retriever is going to be in your yard, Scrap Trawler, and Krark Clan Ironworks, those 3 need to be on the surface level. Here are the steps. Activate Krark Clan Ironworks by sacrificing Scrap Trawler, add 2 colorless mana. When Scrap Trawler dies, it triggers returning Mirror Retriever from your graveyard to your hand. Then you cast the Mirror Retriever by paying the 2 colorless. And then Psy triggers, creating a 1/1 Thopter artifact creature. And then you activate Krark Clan Ironworks twice by sacrificing the Thopter and the Mirror Retriever, creating 4 colorless mana. And this just keeps repeating value and over again until you get this massive army of 1/1 flying Thopter artifact tokens.
I will say
that is one of the 11 breakdowns. It's pretty complex.
It's a really cool combo as well. And I will say for anyone who is an enthusiast for combos like this, many years ago when KCI was legal in Modern, Sam Pardee has a great video on YouTube, right, that showcases the KCI combo, and it has all of the above. It has Mirror Retriever, Scrap Trawler, KCI. It also has the artifacts like Chromatic Star to kind of get the value out of it, but you can't, there is an infinite combo. I don't know how many different infinite combos you can make with this deck or with this combination of cards. But it's, again, going back to the start where we said this was a technical cube, this is kind of up there with the very most technical aspects of this cube, right? Because KCI is pretty technical when you're stacking triggers and you've got all these ETB and LTBs and, sacrifice for mana, and then it goes to the graveyard and you're bringing stuff back and you got to stack stuff. So you're making sure you're getting the right stuff back from your graveyard to your hand or to the battlefield. But this is a really cool and very intricate and very complex combo within this cube. It's one of the reasons why I like it so much is that it has cool stuff like this that you can do.
Yeah, so you can do wild stuff. And I'm actually running in this cube as well. I am running Blade of Shared Souls, which we'll include in the show notes as well. But the gist of that is you can do a KCI combo with Triplicate Titans and keep getting all the golems. You can also do Blade of Shared Souls with Wormcoil Engine and get all the lifelink death touches infinitely and attack with that eventually. It just goes on and on and on. This will all be included in the show notes for anybody that wants to take on a extremely complex. But what I do love about this combo, just like with the Phyrexian Altar combo, is you don't have to do any of this. These pieces are quite all right. Krark Clan Ironworks is perfectly fine just to have as a value card.
It's a great value
Just
piece.
use it to ramp if you don't want to deal with all this. As a matter of fact, if you want to cut somebody off the combo and you just want 2 colorless mana for some servos, whatever.
I'm not a proponent necessarily of hate drafting, but KCI is probably one of the better cards to hate draft if you're in a position to do so.
May, have you ever messed around with any of that level? Or
Oh, absolutely, I have. I'm very much of a Johnny Jenny player, and I like me some KCI Phyrexian Altar. Insert whatever sacrifice outlet equals mana pile here. And immediately when you were starting mentioning, I was immediately looking through the list, seeing what I can make with it. But I really like this card because not only does it get the wheels turning, but it is such a strong win condition once those wheels start turning because it's hard to interact with. It is very, very difficult to answer it.
That is correct. Yeah, there is no corrosive grip in this cube, so good luck.
There maybe should be.
Maybe should be.
Maybe there should be. So give us your final thoughts, right? We're now in the middle of October. We've got CubeCon 2023 right around the corner. Tell us a little bit, just to finalize this episode, about your cube and also why you're so excited to have it featured.
So this is my most mechanical design. As I've said, this is the Ginny, Johnny, Brango Burr, as May likes to say, right? Like everything about this really plays into that. It has all these aggro and control aspects, but really it's kind of like if you're a person that has like this inner welder, right? This is what this cube is for. If you want something, this is not I just had 1 cup of coffee at 9 a.m. This should not be your first draft. This is very complex, but I love everything about it. I would say if I were going to do this, we gave you the list of cards that I think are superior in this environment. I think if you get a couple of those, you will have a leading edge against your opponent. And this environment thrives when you do 2 to 3 colors for the optimal win rate. And you're going to be able to do that through your signets. You're going to be able to do that through your pain lands, and be okay with your mana being a little slower. Kind of like with McDarby's Live the Dream Cube. It's okay to take a little bit of setup time. There's not this real aggro. I think May said this at the beginning of the episode, that aggro equals equipment. Yes, it will start challenging you by turn 2, turn 3, but you don't have a lot of these Savannah Lion variants. Turn
1 and 2 mana
turn
stuff.
1 you get to breathe.
The 1 and 2 mana stuff is not so game ending very quickly that you're like, oh my gosh, it's turn 3 or turn 4, or even turn 5 a lot of the time, where you're thinking my life total is in real danger.
Yeah, so I think it's okay that you take time to build infrastructure as a drafter. Another thing based on last year is Selesnya was the menace. I have toned it back, but I would say that you still should, as the drafter, grab those Manglehorns, grab those Rex Sage, anything that's disenchant effects, treat them as kill spells in this environment. And you should take at least 3 to 4 of those so that you have enough utility. And it's better that if it's on a body so that you have, attack rate as well, versus just a braid is fantastic. But I think in this particular environment, I take Rex Sage over a braid, even though it's not instant, because I want to put equipment on a Rex Sage. That's how I like to play this. May, do you have a thought on that?
No, I don't have a thought. Sorry, I was still looking at combos. Sorry, you got my brain turning, and I'm like, ooh, KCI combos, ooh.
So as we said before, we have toned back the hate, right? So that was we talked about this in our lessons learned episode. We talked about this a couple of our synergy episodes, where things like Collector Oath is no longer in here. Kataki's War Wage is no longer. I'm not doing the punishing you for playing my cube anymore. I've had enough people say that to me.
Kataki War's Wage was a miserable card to play against.
Yeah.
It's a miserable
and
card.
Collector Oof is a miserable card to play against.
And I just we talked about it. I didn't see it that way at the time, and now I do. I've also cut stuff like Strip Mine. We talked about that. None of that's in here anymore. So you're just going to play to your outs, is what I say in this game.
It's more aggressive.
It's more aggressive.
It's more aggressive. I think when you take cards like that out, it incentivizes the drafter to be more aggressive rather than trying to rely on some of those more defensively minding, more stacksy kind of effects, right? Which obviously Kataki War's Wage, Collector Oof, Strip Mine, they're all very stacksy, very taxy, very, anti-play, and get aggro.
I was just going to say that I think our curves in this cube are going to be significantly better because the lack of stacks just existing. So
yeah. And then there's experimental cards in here, as we mentioned before, that I haven't had a chance to test. We drafted recently, but they simply didn't get played, was Agatha Soul Cauldron. We're going to find out together what happens with that. It does a lot of things. It's amazing.
It's going to be an interesting.
Glistening Dawn is a card.
Choice.
It's choice. Don't pass it. Everything's don't pass. And then
no one is passing that card. Pack one, that card is getting taken.
Yeah. And Glistening Dawn, pretty powerful, I think. Goes to Seachrome Shark, right?
I'm taking that.
And then the new Kenna, which is the Boros Adventure Kenna. I don't know the name off the top of my head, but it has the ability to seek out either an equipment or an aura. So it's like one of the very few, if only, tutors in the entire environment. I wanted to incentivize people to do more equipment strategies and get those nettle cysts. There are no swords.
They're going to when
there are no swords. There are no protections. You're looking for stuff like Batterskull. That would be your premium, right? Yeah.
Oh, no. Not Batterskull.
Yeah,
however, will I win the game?
Yeah, Living Weapon is the way that I want to go. But that's kind of in a nutshell, the design elements that I'm looking for. And I'm glad that we got to talk about golems during this episode so that people could see this unusual little subgroup that I've made.
And constructs as well. Like, don't underestimate the golems.
Oh, man, they're
constructs.
so fun.
They're very, very strong. Very strong.
Yeah, so mechanical, synergy, take pieces, build like Legos. Think Legos and you'll be fine. That's how I draft.
Send me your deck posts about the KCI combos, thanks.
Oh, I want to know all about the KCI combos that happen. Yeah, if you pull off that one of I think there's 9 of those, if not with the sword that I talked about. Oh my gosh, go nuts. But we're going to move over to the socials now, and I really am looking forward to people playing this at CubeCon, and I want your feedback. Stu, take us away.
We don't just want feedback at CubeCon. We want feedback on the podcast. Give us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate it. Whatever your podcast platform is, get us out there to more Magic players, Cube curators, listeners to Magic podcasts. We really appreciate it. Again, the 5-star reviews. They've been great. And we thank to all of our listeners. It's great to have you listening to the show, and we hope you enjoy it. You can go check out our altersleeves.com/UberCube affiliate link. If you want to get 5% off your purchase, go bling out your cube or whatever other, Magic thing you've got going on.
I've also just recently added that link to our Buzzsprout account, so it'll show up in the newest episode. So now there's a way to click on it there too.
All right. And if you want to support the show, you can also check out our Inked Gaming affiliate link. If you're looking for some playmats, dice bags, mouse pads, all kinds of cool custom products that are available over there to, again, bling out your Magic experience.
You got that sweet mat. You got your UberCube mat?
I do.
And you got your UberCube mat?
I
and
do.
I got my
I
UberCube
absolutely do.
Nice. Representing. All right, cool.
I love very high quality. Love the stitching.
The stitching is fantastic.
No more fraying around the side to get all my cards caught.
Yep.
As always, we love to hear from everybody on the Twitters. Hit us up at UberCubeMTGPod. You can also reach us via email, UberCubeMTGPodcast@gmail.com. And the Discord is popping. #UberCube. Come check us out. Just tell us about your decks. Tell us about your cubes. If you want some help, if you want to just talk about Cube, or you want to talk about the very, very upcoming, or very, very close to happening CubeCon 2023.
I want to see all those deck posts.
Can't wait.
In the Discord.
I want all of them from CubeCon.
Yeah, get them live. I want to see live feeds.
Tell us about
That'd be so
Patreon,
fun.
Anthony, because we've got a recent new subscriber to our Patreon.
Yeah, our good friend Stephen Conefald just recently became a
Thank you,
subscriber.
Stephen.
So now, thank you, Stephen.
Love
thank
you, brother.
Preston. Thank you, Sam, for supporting the show. We're working on episodes and to collaborate with each one of these individuals. And if you're interested in doing just that, check out our Patreon account, which is included in the show notes, also in the Buzzsprout account, and you can find all your major players. Click on it, and it goes a long way to support the show, and it helps me to keep this thing alive.
I still need a new microphone.
Yeah, no one's going to buy
At
you
least a microphone. I know.
Our tech guy needs a microphone.
Look, tech ain't cheap.
The one thing he had to do. May, would you like to say the thing that we always say here at UberCube? And it's Happy
Artifacts.
See you, CubeCon.